So hello, and thank you all the EA Zoom community, and Linda, thank you especially for all the work that you do behind the scenes to make this all possible. You are amazing, and what you produce is amazing, so thank you. So here we are. We're coming up to the end of the year. This has been a very difficult year for everybody. In some ways, it's been probably the most stressful year in many of our lives, if not in history, in the time we're passing through. And we're coming to the time where we're all, kind of hoping, the year is over and we can just move on with our lives. Well, we are going to move on with our lives. The year is not quite over. And I'm going to walk through the next 4 weeks of astrological events with you to kind of examine what it is that we can expect this month, and perhaps what may be up ahead, beyond that. So what I would like to talk about is the December lunar cycle, which begins tomorrow and will go to the next new moon on the 14th of December. So here we are in the United States. We have crossed an important threshold. We Democrats, Joe Biden has taken the election, hasn't quite taken the White House yet, and that's part of the controversy that we are dealing with. Remains to be seen how this is all going to play out. We're not yet out of the woods. We have to understand that the outer planet squares to Eris continue this month, Jupiter and Pluto. And not Pluto this month. Pluto will return next month for us. Pluto's got 2 more visits with Eris in 2021. And if you've listened to my talks, you've read about Eris, you know that from my perspective, Eris is the planetary energy that is really responsible for the tumult and the chaos that we have experienced. These major conjunctions that occurred back in January occur with regularity. At the most, they happen every 30, 35 years, and a couple of them, every decade. But this time it's been way different, and it's because of Eris's, quote, participation in the event. Pallas Athena will transit into Aquarius. She begins or reawakens the journey of the outer planets into Aquarius. Saturn has been there already and retreated back into Capricorn, into his own homeland, but he's already headed back. Jupiter's headed back, and down the road, Pluto will be there as well. And this is eclipse season again. We're having the second and last eclipse of 2020. It's going to open this month. It will be the full moon that's going to occur in 2 weeks, the Gemini full moon, which is a penumbral lunar eclipse, and it will span the rest of the year. These are the events that I would like to go over with you today. And you see I've got them laid out here by dates. It's just a handful, but I think that they're pretty powerful. We're going to look at the Scorpio new moon tomorrow, the Pallas square to Eris, the Jupiter square to Eris, the Sun ingress into Sagittarius, the beginning of the solar month on November 21st. Neptune will turn direct in just about the middle of Pisces on November 28th. And as I said, we have a Gemini lunar eclipse at 8 degrees of Gemini, excuse me, on November 30th. And then Pallas Athena will also enter the sign of Aquarius in December on the 10th. And on the same day, Hygeia is going to station retrograde. And I'm going to unpack each of these events as we move through this talk. So we'll start with the Scorpio new moon. It is at 23 degrees of Scorpio, as I said. It's November 15th, which is tomorrow. It occurs at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the moon at this lunation separates from a disseminating trine to Neptune retrograde in Pisces. And it also separates from a new phase conjunction to Juno in Scorpio. It applies to a disseminating square to Ceres in Pisces and separates from our first quarter square to Hygeia in Leo and applies to a gibbous conjunct to Eris in Aries. And you can see that we've got a conjunction, 2 squares, and an inconjunct, and a trine to Neptune. These are not easy transits. Each one is packed with emotional and energy that really will reflect and will be a carryover of many of the experiences that we are having. The new moon, though, is in Scorpio, and that is a special case. It's a deep dive in Scorpio. It's a dive, into Pluto's realm. Collective emotions continue to run high as outer world events descend into a political underworld. And a deeply reflecting and unsettling influence will pervade the lunar month. We're drawn inward and we're more aware of our dreams and our fears. Hope emerges for healing divisions. It's not like there isn't hope out there, but it can falter. We're going to encounter circumstances and events that are going to challenge what it is that we're hoping to happen. There are going to be power struggles, stridency, and controversy are going to persist. And it's the commitments to political positions that are so intense, they're going to intensify. They're seeking recovery in each case, whichever side of the fence you're on, they're going to seek to recover what it is that they perceive as loss. This is Eris. The healing process is challenged. Hygeia is the healing process itself, and it's under stress. This is a difficult emotional aftermath that we're going to wade through for the next 4 weeks. I'd like, I don't want to instill fear in anybody because, as you'll see as I walk through this, I do believe we have to see the big picture and understand what's happening on a larger evolutionary scale, on a soul scale, if you would. But we're going through the narrows. It's Odysseus's sail through Charybdis and Scylla, through the dangers that seem to lurk on both sides. Pallas Athena squares Eris retrograde at 23 degrees of Capricorn. If you look at the chart, you'll see that there's quite a stack up in Capricorn at the moment. We've got Saturn at 27, Pallas at 23, Jupiter at 23, and Pluto at 22. It doesn't get much tighter than that in terms of outer planet transits. So we see that Pallas is applying to a partile last quarter square to Eris. And as I've said, Eris is that discord and chaos that we're seeing. She's a bitter pill. The flip side, and the good news about Eris is that she brings to resolution those issues which, for some reason, were absolutely unable to be resolved in any other way. She upsets the entire apple cart. She's very Plutonian in that way, but she does create something new in her wake. We all assume that Eris, we assign Eris the responsibility for the Trojan War. She's also responsible for the formation of the empire, the Roman classical age. And I would point you to the mythology of Aeneas, who was of the royal family of Troy, who fled Troy after the Trojan War to Italy. That really, as the founder of Rome, was the completion of that cycle. Well, we also see a partile disseminating square to Venus, our values and priorities in Libra, need for balance, but it's a square. It's an exact same point square where we are struggling. There's a crisis really to achieve balance and to find that balance of our priorities and values, because the two camps politically are so polarized. Pallas also separates from a crescent square to Mars in Aries. Clearly Mars is not, going to be quiet about what his intention.
Hi, Daniel.
I'm not sure what happened. Did I drop out?
Yes, you did. If you could just go back to your slides and take us from where you were talking about Mars.
Okay, I'm going to have to.
You're still
Go
live.
back to my.
Yep.
Yes, I have to bring up my slides again, and they've disappeared from my sharing screen. So hang on one second.
Okay.
Okay, so there's also a crescent square to Mars. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes. Or just go
Yes.
to full screen, and then you're right to go.
Okay, you're right. There we go. All right, so there's a second square to Mars. Mars is conjunct Eris at the moment, and again, that's really adding to the no pun intended, adding to the fire. And Pallas also separates from a partile conjunction, new phase conjunction to Jupiter. New phase conjunctions can be challenging because they're two archetypes that are working overtime in a sense to combine and blend their energies. Jupiter, I think, is going to clearly feed the discord and the chaos that Eris has brought. And we have a balsamic conjunction from Pallas to Saturn as well. So there's, it could be a sense of restriction, repression, suppression, something's trying to be crystallized. There's a new form that's trying to take shape. And Pallas is also working with that in terms of her wisdom and her strategy in order to understand it and help us understand it. And Pallas separates from a new phase conjunction to Pluto as well. So we've got all these outer planet energies in Capricorn, all impinging on Pallas, the goddess of wisdom, of strategy. Pallas shows us the big picture. And when we understand the big picture, then we know how all the little pieces fit together. She's a very, very powerful energy. She was the most held in the highest regard of all of the goddesses of the Greek pantheon. Athens was named for her. Just minimize that. So what we could expect, with Eris's participation, at any level, with any planet, is chaotic events driven by disruptive self-interest. Eris is in Aries. They necessitate a new understanding of how power can and should be structured. Because of her, Saturn and Pluto is power and structured power. That's really what we're up against right now. We're dealing with structured power, on one side of the aisle in our Congress that has been organized for many years, and the other side of the aisle is really learning to understand that they need to get organized as well. There's a new urgency to embody principles of equality and balance into collective priorities. We need to bring this stuff to the collective and begin to agree on it. And the impetus is to move past anger and self-interest, but it's disrupted. It's just not moving smoothly. And as I said, collective wisdom struggles to emerge. On the 17th, only a day later or so, we have Jupiter squaring, this is the same, I apologize, this is the same. No, this is Jupiter. Okay, I'm a little confused with getting knocked off. Jupiter will square Eris as well, at 23 degrees of Capricorn, and this is the last of three last quarter squares. She has been exacerbating the Eris-driven chaos and conflict since it started. And Jupiter is essentially making all the same aspects as Pallas because Jupiter is a conjunct Pallas. So we've got the last quarter square to Eris, a disseminating square to Venus, a crescent square to Mars, a balsamic conjunction to Saturn, the new phase conjunction to Pluto, and she applies to that, as I said, that balsamic conjunction to Pallas. So we're seeing Jupiter and Pallas really kind of combining their energies with Eris, and trying to bring in wisdom because Jupiter's also working on Pallas. She's expanding Pallas's mind, if you would, in some way, and Pallas is feeding Jupiter's growth factor as well. So there's a lot of give and take here. But it's Eris that's the key player here. That really is the foundation of what's happening, because Eris is a 500-year transit. It takes her 60 years to pass through each point in Aries. She's in Aries for 129 years. So she literally retrogrades over every single point in Aries twice. Very, very difficult transit. It's her longest transit through any zodiacal sign. She's been there since 1927, and she'll be there till 2048. The exercise in March, the first conjunction delivered the beginning of the coronavirus lockdowns. That's when it began, at this first conjunction. And the exercise of power expands in an unsettling way, generating potentially difficult circumstances. Excuse me. The sharing of political power is repressed. Pluto is about sharing, and political power, Saturn and Pluto, clearly. Personal freedoms are suppressed. At the second perfection, the second conjunction in June, the number of cases worldwide exploded past 1 million as COVID dissenters, I'm not sure what else to call them, ignored wearing masks and social distancing. And I don't know if anybody's looked at the numbers today, but we are not only in the third wave, but the third wave towers so far above the second wave that it just is it's skyrocketed. As the cycle completes, health crises, health priorities reach a crisis level as resistance and pushback hardens. There's a lot of people who are pushing back against this, and I do understand this. This loss of social activity, the loss of personal freedom. It's difficult, and it impinges on some of our personal values, regardless of what we feel about what's the disease itself. But we have to work with the science. We don't have any choices. And as the responsibility increasingly falls on government institutions to find the remedies, to take charge of this, and to generate new strategies, Pallas Athena, to stem this rising outbreak. On the 21st, the sun enters the sign of Sagittarius, beginning the solar month. But the solar month begins as crises arise, as the struggle to find objectivity, Sagittarius, is obfuscated by personal subjectivity. The sun is relatively orphaned, accessing only a single personal planet, just the moon, as it applies to a crescent square to the Aquarian moon. That's why I use the word objectivity. The sun applies to a crescent square to Ceres, and also applies to a first quarter trine to Chiron. So again, we see the sun in a very difficult position here, because it's pretty much not connecting with any of the personal planets, which really give it the ability to disseminate, to spread its warmth, if you would, to spread its solar energy. It's restricted. It's restricted in some way. Only squaring the moon, which is our emotional body, certainly not, a square to the moon to our emotional body is certainly not a pleasant state of being. And the square to Ceres as well. It's the search for universal truth. We feel we've been abducted by deception and selfish immorality. Chiron, trying to Chiron, old wounds resurface and fester. And collective crises descend into an emotional underworld. It's truly a Ceres moment, with the moon conjunct out of sign, conjunction with Ceres in Aquarius. It's a very difficult moment. And again, this isn't a one-day event. This doesn't just happen on November 21st. This carries through the full lunar month, which is also a 4-week cycle. These are the transits that the sun will make through this 4-week period. It ingresses on the 21st. It will square Ceres, which I just referred to, bringing all that Ceres energy directly to its expression on the 23rd. Then trine Chiron on the 25th, square Vesta on the 6th, then square Hygeia on the 6th as well, square Neptune on the 9th, Mars on the 11th, and trine Eris. And you can see that on the left there in orange, I've kind of highlighted these aspects. Again, these are difficult aspects. We're not seeing, trines to Venus and trines to Mercury and trines to Neptune. We're seeing difficult aspects to outer planets. Again, there's no relationship to the inner planets. It's almost as if it's very just, there's a disconnected, there's an orphaned modality here. On the 28th, Neptune will station direct, and at this station, it applies to a square to the lunar nodes, what we know in EA as a skip step, and it's been there for a while, and it's going to be there, again for weeks and another few months. It moves very slowly, especially stationing. The nodes are at about 19 or 20 right now. Yeah, they're at 19. And so it's right in orb. It's going to remain in orb for quite some time. You keep putting up this the skip step phenomenon where somehow our beliefs, or the polarity of our beliefs, are struggling to be resolved. It's not only squaring the nodes, but it's also squaring the US Neptune as well, right? Regardless of what chart you look at, Neptune is opposite Neptune. And it clearly, explains this deep entrenchment of beliefs, the deep polarization that we are experiencing in this country that just seems, in some ways immovable. Both sides of the fence are really immovable, and somehow we have to bridge that gap. We have to find a way to accept what other people believe, as long as clearly they're not, creating violence as a result. Our collective path forward is flooded with stresses from the past. We're reliving things that from the past, and again, in my perspective, this came on the xenophobia, and it came over on the Mayflower. This didn't just emerge in 2019, and then all of a sudden in 2020 it went full bloom. It's been swept under the rug and hidden in the American culture, excuse me, the U.S. culture. I don't like the word American anymore because there's a North.
Go ahead.
All right, I apologize, everybody. We'll blame Comcast if we have to blame somebody. On the 28th, Neptune's going to station direct, and Neptune has been squaring the lunar nodes for quite some time now. We know in EA that is a skip step. That it exposes some major principle, some major dynamic that has been ignored or denied, something that needs to be resolved. And it's about our belief structure. It's about our belief system. And this polarity in our country is clearly reflected in the fact that Neptune not only is squaring the lunar nodes of Gemini and Cancer right now, but it's also opposite the US Neptune, no matter which US chart you choose to work with. This polarity it occurred last actually during the American Civil War. So to a great degree, we're seeing the same kinds of dynamics. It's not about slavery, but it's about xenophobia. It really is reawakening many of the things from the past. And, I maintain that, it didn't just happen in the last decade or even in this century, that, what we're experiencing, came over in the Mayflower. We're dealing with ages old xenophobia and patriarchy that is just, all coming to a head right now, and coming to a head in 2020. It separates from a trine to Mercury. Neptune applies to a disseminating trine to Venus. There's a full phase opposition to Vesta, or personal authenticity, a disseminating trine to Juno, or commitment, and a Gibbous conjunct to Hygeia, the healing process itself. Our collective process is flooded with stresses by the past. As I said, we are dealing with things that are centuries old, in some cases millennia. It can even go back to the Crusades. We're looking at history. We're reliving history, unresolved history, and anxiety from a variety of probable futures as well. Because the future is probable. It's going to be determined by the choices that we make in this moment. The North Node is seeded, it's fertilized, it has tremendous potentials to go forward, but it needs to be approached proactively. It needs to be worked with in order for it to manifest, and that all happens in the moment. A skip step, a lunar node square is resolved. The lunar axis, north node and south node are resolved by working with the moon in the current lifetime at the center point to synthesize it. So we need to find the center between these opposing polarities to really honor the other people's individuality, honor their beliefs, to the degree that it's nonviolent and that we can all live together. The deep commitments to personal universal truths and beliefs are embedded with non-compromising values and priorities. This is the Venus portion of it, this disseminating trine where these values and priorities are just active, and being professed in the world and embodied. And it applies intense emotional pressure to the zeitgeist, to the events in the world, and they compete for supremacy. There's an intense focus, exposure, and discernment of what is authentically important. This is the Vesta portion, Vesta in Virgo. And a healing crisis struggles to unfold regarding how we are self-actualizing as individuals and as a cohesive collective. So on November 30th, we have what, clearly, in my opinion, is the major event of this lunar cycle, is the lunar cycle that occurs at 8 degrees of Gemini. Since ancient times, eclipses have been held to be portents of critical events in human experience. A lunar eclipse is a powerfully magnified full moon. This is a Gemini full moon. Monthly lunations set the tone for the current lunar cycle every 29.5 days, roughly every 30 days. But eclipses set the tone for the following 6 months. The moon correlates to our emotional nature. We know it's our emotional body. So a full moon brings the ego to the forefront, closer to our instinctual, often habitual, and impulsive self. The lunar eclipse happens when the full moon occurs in 18 degrees of the lunar nodes. And you can see that they're 11 degrees apart. It's going to be a penumbral, what's known as a penumbral eclipse, where the Earth will be in the shadow of the eclipse. It will not be a full eclipse. Eclipses occur across the axis of the moon's nodes, where the moon's orbit intersects with the ecliptic, which is the imaginary line of the sun's orbit around the Earth, and the circle created by the Earth's orbit, or the moon's orbit around the sun. That need to correct that. These two powerful energetic crossroads mark the liminal time and space where the moon and Earth weave their planetary frequencies in their diurnal motion. The moon and Earth and sun are all interacting with each other at every moment. It's the solar energy is actually spread across delivered to the Earth through the moon. We can't really receive any of these outer planets or the sun's energy directly. It's the moon which is the orbiter, and they weave their magic, at every moment. And in an eclipse, they weave a very special magic. The intensity of the eclipses is due to the fact that the lunar nodal axis correlates directly to the evolutionary path itself, from past to future, synthesized over the course of a lifetime in the present through the direct emotional experience of the current moon in this lifetime. As I said, it's through the current moon. We have to work through our own emotional body to resolve this. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, but as such, our souls are learning through direct emotional experience. That's the work of Pluto. So at this penumbral eclipse, Gemini and Sagittarius, the moon applies to a full phase in conjunct to Venus, applies to a disseminating square to Neptune, applies to a disseminating trine to Vesta, separates from a disseminating trine to Ceres, separates from a partile balsamic semisquare to Eris, and separates from a disseminating trine to Hygeia. Crises erupt regarding the abuse of power and the clash of ideas and beliefs. Issues surrounding truth and lies, it's Gemini and Sagittarius, and outright lawlessness, Eris perhaps, conspiracies, lawless conspiracies create the crises generated by this Gemini full moon. Conflicting collective priorities regarding the transfer of power, authenticity, healthcare, and collective healing are all on the table. The commitments that we have made with ourselves, Juno is conjunct Mercury. Mercury is the ruler of the moon, of this lunar eclipse. The commitments we've made with ourselves and the contracts we have made with others are brought to our attention. Sentiments of being saved or martyred are the primary experiences. This is Neptune. Excuse me. And the eclipse is in the Saros cycle. Eclipses occur in 18-year repetitive cycle. And this is cycle 116, correlating back to November 2002, which ushered in the Homeland Security Act and the Iraq War. This eclipse will be visible all across of North and South America, and will track directly along the east coast of the United States. In other words, it's said that if you live where the eclipse is visible, it's most potent, and it will track directly over Washington, D.C. In my humble opinion, this is a "do you really think it can happen here" event. On December 7th, Pallas will ingress into Aquarius. And as I said, we're moving from Capricorn into Aquarius. The outer planets are now not just in the last decan of Capricorn, but the last few degrees of Capricorn. We will see all this Aquarius energy begin to emerge in full force beginning in December as Saturn and Jupiter conjoin in Aquarius and move through it. Jupiter will be in Aquarius through the entire year of 2021 as it turns retrograde and moves back and forth. So we'll be there from December this year to December next year, and Saturn will join it. Pallas at this ingress separates from a partile balsamic semi-square, a crisis to Mercury, to the narratives we tell ourselves. Mercury and Pallas, have a direct correlation because Pallas is the what's known as the octave transformer between Mercury and Uranus, and you see both Mercury and Uranus are in play at this ingress. Mercury being the lower mind, Uranus being the higher mind. And we also have the Mercury and Jupiter, which is Mercury left brain and Jupiter right brain. So there's a lot of air, mental energy that is embedded in this lunar cycle. And as it moves into Aquarius, Aquarius ruled by Uranus. Uranus is difficult because Uranus interrupts and disrupts the Capricorn energy, the Capricorn structuring, the Capricorn crystallization that occurred, in the prior sign. As we progress out of one into the other, it's going to, connect with all of these crystallized structures and beliefs and things that are embedded not just in the United States but around the world. So it bodes for some very disruptive energy. The Aquarius, is this the Aquarian age? I don't know. That's another whole discussion. So a new cycle of crises regarding the understanding and the collective wisdom responsible for our personal world circumstances emerges. And events are driven by what appears to be a chaotic and disruptive restructure of political power. But again, I remind you about Eris, that she is chaotic, she is disruptive, but she also clears the field, if you would, for something new to emerge. I love to use this analogy that both Samuel Hahnemann and Charles Manson had very prominent Erises in their chart. It can, again, it depends on the consciousness that's brought to it. And the last transit that's going to occur, the last major transit, is Hygeia stationing retrograde right at 15 degrees of Leo. 15 degrees of every fixed sign is a very stubborn, very difficult post because it's halfway through the archetype, and because it's a fixed sign, it has to begin to adapt, to move towards the sign that follows it. It has to begin to, look over the fence and see Virgo, being discriminating and being able to change, and Gemini, Mercury being able to turn on a dime. And here it is in this fixed sun sign of really just wanting to be up there in the middle of the sky and shine its light. It's a difficult point on which to retrograde, just to begin with. At this point, it separates from a disseminating trine to the sun, applies to a disseminating trine to Mercury, separates from a last quarter square to Venus, separates from a disseminating trine to Mars, separates from a disseminating trine to Uranus, separates from a gibbous inconjunct to Ceres, separates from a first quarter trine to the lunar north node, and separates from a last quarter sextile to the lunar north node. It's a trine to the lunar south node and a sextile to the lunar north node. So you can see that there's a grand trine in the chart, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be an easy passage. It just means that the opportunities and the facility is there to work through some of these crises that we're experiencing. Jeffrey Wolf Green always said that it's the squares and the oppositions and the conjunctions that get us moving, that get us off the couch. It's the trines that create the couch potatoes, and it is the cardinal signs, all this cardinal energy in the outer planets that generates. Is Saturn. Everybody has this kind of trepidation about Saturn, but Saturn gets things done. Saturn makes things happen, and right now he's traveling with Pluto and Jupiter, so he's got he's got a whole team working here really to get some work done. So we just have to be patient, and we have to just hang in there and work with it. And understand that, I love the line from Exotic Marigold Hotel movie, if anybody has seen it, where Dev Patel in his role says, everything's going to be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's because it's not the end. So the takeaway is that if there's one thing that we can all agree on, it's that 2020 has been one of the most difficult years in our lives, if not in history. As the year ends, there seems to be no let-up of the pressure that we've been enduring. If anything, my counsel is to brace us for more of the same as the year ends and 2021 begins. I have to call it like I see it, guys. I sincerely believe and I sincerely wish that I could offer you hope that in the immediate future, the political and social stresses will recede, but in good conscience, I cannot. We need to brace ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in each of our four bodies in order to navigate the road ahead. But there's a way to work with it. Again, we can work with all this Capricorn energy. The Capricorn stellium offers the potential for grounding. According to Jupiter's spirit, we can immerse in nature and work with natural law. According to Saturn's generative power, we can take responsibility for ourselves and not wait for somebody to come and save us, because they're not coming. According to Pluto's power, standing on our own authority and sharing it with others. And according to Pallas Athena's wisdom, to see the big picture. Blessings and prayers for peace, safety, and well-being. And I'll open the floor to anybody who might have a question or a comment.
I have a question.
Sure. Who is this?
This is Della.
Hi, Della.
I wonder if my picture's showing up, but yeah, when you mentioned the 15th degree of fixed signs, I'm curious if there's an orb around that degree, like as things are transiting through there. And then I'm also curious, is that 14 to 15 or 1501 to 1599? You know what I mean?
It's a good question. There is a process that unfolds from 0 to 29. There's nothing static here. We look at individual points. We take snapshots of archetypes and aspects, but we're really looking at a movie. We're looking at something that's always in motion. The 15 degree is the moment in that forward direction where there is this tension to hold on to the past and not move into the future, because it's a fixed sign. It's that fixed energy. It's not mutable. It's not cardinal. It doesn't want to, create something. It's not moving. It's not in movement, and it doesn't have the ability to adapt very well. And what exacerbates that issue is that it's moving into a mutable sign, so it has to change its nature. It cannot complete its cycle through Leo. It cannot complete that cycle that I described from 0 to 29, hitting the 29 degree as the most critical point, even more critical than 15, because that's where it's got to deal with everything that's still hanging fire in order to transform into Virgo. It's because of its fixed nature. And yes, it is just that point. Could we say that there's an orb of maybe 30 minutes either side? I'm really not sure. I think it's when it hits that 15-degree point, whether it's 1501 or 1529. I think that it's that 15 degrees that really is the mark. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Daniel, do you have a slide with your contact details?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. My shameless self-promotion. All right, so I have two books right now on Amazon. One is a compilation of some essays that I've written about evolutionary astrology. I think it's very good. I encourage everybody to read it. It's another perspective of how EA can work. I use mythology. I use astronomy. It's not just pure Jeffrey. I love Jeffrey. I think Jeffrey is really an important component of this. But I've brought in some other teachings and some other perspectives that help us understand how these archetypes are working, from mythology and astronomy. America at the Crossroads is, I work with a chart from 1775. This book explains why I believe it is the chart that is most historically supported, because the chart is cast for the time that the 13 British colonies declared war, the Second Continental Congress. This is all in the journals of the Continental Congress. There is historical support that on that morning they enacted two acts. They enacted an act to bear arms against England, and they appointed George Washington as the commander-in-chief. They established a Continental Army. Up until that time, all of the battles with the British at Concord and Lexington were skirmishes. They were defensive actions, villages protecting themselves against the invading British army. But on this date, they actually said, well, we cannot take this anymore. We must protect our land, our families. And when a colony declares war against its mother country, it ceases to be a colony. It becomes a sovereign nation by default. I believe that 1776 was the country's first birthday. The first year of the American Revolution was amazingly difficult. The revolution almost ended in the swamps of Morristown in New Jersey in that winter. But Washington kept it, the troops survived, and Washington was able to cross the Delaware to Philadelphia, and the war ensued, and they finally were able to evict the British from American soil, from United States soil. And by 1776, they had the confidence enough to say, yes, we made it, we've won, we are an independent country. But it really happened a year earlier. All the charts work. I mean, if that's our first birthday, it works as well. You can take the first birthday of your child or your grandchild, and you can use that in some ways to determine their future growth. But this July 6th, 1775 chart that I use, I have found to be remarkable. It came to me through Ariel Gutman, who's known for her Venus work, but she also collaborated for a long time with Jim Lewis, who had realized astrocartography. And Jim Lewis believed that this chart was the true chart of the United States. And what I've done here in this book is I have used the synastry of the US election night to that chart. And it's remarkable. I encourage you all to read it. Excuse me. I do astrological weather reports on a daily basis. I do monthly transits and horoscopes on my website. I do daily transits as I feel that there's an important transit on Facebook, on my story, or on my Facebook page. Personal consultations are available to understand how these things personally affect you, also on my website. And I have just launched a Patreon page. I believe that there is a metaphysical principle of equal exchange in all transactions, and I'm just encouraging people to come support my work. It will give me the ability to expand my work. I would like to start some classes. I would like to create some forums of my own where participants we can all gather and we can speak and talk about what's going on. And I'm offering some tremendous value with it. I'm actually offering free readings at one level, discounted half price readings at another level, 20-minute monthly sessions on one of the levels for people who would like to just ask questions. So it's really a win-win situation for everybody. And I encourage you, please, to check it out.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm and great work. Would you all please thank Daniel Fiverson?
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you all so much. Just be well, be safe.
Thank you.
Same to you.